Okay, so basically there is some do's and don'ts that you don't do, okay, and it's very important to remember that, because otherwise if the diagrams get very big and very complicated and you don't follow the rules properly, for example like this, going backward sort of things, then you will be having a lot of very very ugly, very very difficult to analyze kind of diagram. Okay, so basically I need to introduce to you from this particular exam from this particular network. Okay, so what do we do with this network? Okay, this aspect is something for us to address in that sense. Okay, let me get my files up properly. Okay, yeah. So here you see, after you understand that you need to draw everything, there's two types of network, AON and AOA. Okay, and then the basic terminology to those particular diagram, and then you know how to draw a nice diagram. And then once you know how to draw a proper diagram, what you need to do is you need to analyze that particular diagram. Okay, so what's the point of drawing a diagram? It's not really for show, so it's actually to really read the diagram. And what do we do with this diagram? We actually analyze it using a technique called critical path analysis, which is going to be the earlier part of this notes here. Okay, so critical path analysis, or what we call critical path method, is actually a very mathematical approach. It's a very systematic, very mathematical approach to actually do scheduling. It actually takes the network diagram or the model that you draw that shows the activities and the job that is to be done and their relationship. So what you do is you actually apply an analysis to that particular network, and that analysis is called the critical path analysis or critical path method. Okay, and but before you can do all that, you already need to know you already need to have a duration that you previously determined, and then you need to do the sequencing of the activities before you can actually draw the diagram. So, and the analysis of CPM. Okay, so what this method provide you with is it will actually help you to calculate the earliest start, earliest finish to each activity, and then the latest start and latest finish to each activity. And it can also analyze if there's any spare time for each activity, and then it will finally produce a critical path for that particular activity. So you see, if you do not know what are the critical path, meaning that there will be a starting point to the ending point whereby all the activities that is on that particular line cannot be delayed without delaying the entire project. So you need to recognize those activities. So by recognizing those, you are actually in a better position to actually do your to actually plan your resources. That's number one. And then if you know that there is some critical activity, you know where to focus your resources on. And if there's a delay that occurs in any one of those activities, something for you all to note as well. If the delay that is occurring on the other activities that is non-critical, you probably could actually look into the spare time that is available for that particular activity, or the float time, what we call the float time, then make other arrangements, but it is not critical. But the critical activity will actually involve the entire project to be delayed, and therefore you may have to pump in more resources to it as well. So there's two parts here. One is you actually understood the float time and the spare time that is available for each activity and the overall project. Then you will know how to actually play with your resources a bit more effectively by doing multiple project planning. And then by understanding that those activities that don't have float time or spare time and they are on the critical path, you may have to actually pay special attention to it, and also to actually put down more resources to it should there be a problem to those particular activities. So these are the analysis that critical path analysis, or what we call the critical path method, will actually provide you with. Okay, and the other name for critical path method is PERT, P-E-R-T. In many books, they will tell you PERT. In a lot of project management books, they talk about PERT, but PERT is actually dealing with probabilistic method, meaning that the calculation wise are based on probability. So which we are not going to learn here. And but the method analysis is exactly the same. It's just that with critical path method, time is a deterministic factor, meaning that it will be determined. It's a 1, it's a 1. It's not a 1.1 or 1.2 or 1.3, or possibility of 1 is how much, like that. Okay, so 1 is basically it will happen as 1 day or 5 days or 6 days or 10 days or 1 month, 2 months and 3 months. Okay, so these are something to look upon. And before I move into talk about more on critical path method, just remember that in scheduling and all scheduling technique, whether it's Gantt chart or network or critical path analysis, duration should always be in the same terminology, meaning that if you're using days, it's going to be days across the board. If you're going to be using month, it's going to be month across the board. If you're going to be using weeks, it's going to be weeks across the board. So don't mix time with different kind of factors inside there, denominator, what we call it, so you don't say some of them is 500 days, another one is 500 months. It's different. You don't mix that. You don't mix it in your in any one of your analysis when it comes to duration. Okay, so here we do not want to actually I actually explain to you why it's important to do critical path analysis, and then because normally we will assume that the activity, the duration that is being given is actually being put under a normal resources loading load, you see, and that is normal. So but then once you understand your analysis, then you will see that there's a lot of things that you can actually do with it. So these are some of the assumptions that you take before you actually can come out with this critical path. You can actually do the analysis for critical path. Okay, so there are, I think at the back of the notes also there is a part that I actually explained to everybody. This is the extra notes that why we need critical path method or critical path analysis, and what information that it can actually provide you with is what I was saying to you just now. It helps you to play with your resources a bit more effectively, and number 2, it actually helps you to focus your resources on a bit more effectively. So all these informations are very important when it comes to resources. So after we've done our Gantt chart, we will move on and do your critical path analysis, and then you go back to do your resources planning, and all these will actually be factored into the final project plan. See, so your final project plan will have to go through the motion of resources to scheduling to critical path analysis, and back to resources again. It's one full circle in a way to actually come up with the best possible plan that you can get for the project. Okay, so we will come to that a bit later. So this part here, I actually provide you with an example of how to do critical path analysis, and these are some of the notes and do's and don'ts which we've explained already.